hearing, oversight hearing, when I said before we asked the director of the FBI any questions or any statements, that we should, both sides, treat each other with respect. And I even said to Patel, if you don't get a chance to answer your questions, I'll give you an opportunity after the senator's finished for a few minutes to respond whatever you didn't get a chance to say. And you know how that meeting turned out. And particularly from your side of the aisle, a lot of strong statements about the FBI director. Whether they were legitimate or not is beside the point. It didn't follow the decorum, and obviously the director of the FBI didn't follow the decorum. So I don't know what more I can do than plead with my people who are fellow senators to follow a certain decorum, and I assume it would be followed on the other side. I don't appreciate the insults that went to Democrat members, particularly where they were wrong, but after seeing how senators handled the FBI director, I guess I felt that just let the show go on the way the senators want it to go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the advantages of being the junior most member of the committee on our side of the aisle is you get to listen to everything that's gone on before you during the course of a hearing. And I want to add my voice to my colleagues who've raised the concern about what happened yesterday. I listened to my ranking member ask a legitimate oversight question about the legal basis for troops to be rappelling from a Black Hawk helicopter for a military-style assault on an apartment building in a major city, the zip tying of children. What was the legal basis for this? I heard my ranking member ask that very simple question, that completely appropriate question. If that's not an appropriate oversight question, I don't know what an appropriate oversight question is. And the response was not just to refuse to answer the question, but it was to attack the character of the ranking member and to insult him. And then when it was Senator Whitehouse's turn to ask a question, he asked a very legitimate oversight question about a FBI undercover operation in which reportedly $50,000 was paid to the White House border czar prior to him becoming the White House border czar, but with the expectation that he would be helpful in arranging contracts when he became the White House border czar. What happened to the money? A perfectly legitimate oversight question. And rather than answer that question in a closed investigation, not an open investigation, but a closed investigation, she simply attacked Senator Whitehouse personally. And I heard another one of my colleagues ask, what was the legal basis for blowing up ships in the Caribbean? Reportedly, the Justice Department wrote an opinion justifying blowing up ships in the Caribbean. A perfectly legitimate oversight question, and the response was another personal attack. These, what were apparently canned, written personal attacks in advance. I wouldn't bother with the attacks on me. I've grown all too accustomed to them for the last 8 years. But if members of this committee can't ask those serious questions and get serious answers, we can't do oversight. I'm new to this committee. I spent about a decade on the House Judiciary Committee. I never saw a hearing like this with a cabinet officer. And if I did, and some Democratic cabinet officer were to personally attack each of my Republican colleagues, I would call for a stop to it. It would be disgraceful. And I understand the reluctance to criticize on your side of the aisle one of the Republican cabinet members. But if this becomes the template for future hearings, we won't be able to do any oversight, and things will just degenerate. These questions deserve answers. I would expect that if troops were rappelling from helicopters in any city, in any of your states, and hog-tying children, you would want to know the legal basis. And so would I. We are going to submit for the record in written form the questions that the Attorney General refused to answer. I would hope, Mr. Chairman, you would join us in submitting those questions. They will have a much better chance of being answered if you join us in submitting those questions. But I would hope also in the future that if a witness, rather than respond, simply attacks our members, that it be stopped. That the witness be instructed to either answer the question or to state why they're refusing to answer the question, but to refrain from personal attacks on the members of this committee. That would be my request. And Mr. Chairman, I'm really grateful to be on this committee. And I appreciate every interaction I've had with you. You have, in our personal interactions, always been eminently fair. If I didn't think that you were of that character, I wouldn't even raise this because there wouldn't be a point. But I would ask that we not have another hearing like that one, and that you join in our legitimate oversight request. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thought that I set the decorum for a hearing, oversight hearing, when I said before we asked the director of the FBI any questions or any statements, that we should, both sides, treat each other with respect. And I even said to Patel, if you don't get a chance to answer your questions, I'll give you an opportunity after the senator's finished for a few minutes to respond whatever you didn't get a chance to say. And you know how that meeting turned out. And particularly from your side of the aisle, a lot of strong statements about the FBI director. Whether they were legitimate or not is beside the point. It didn't follow the decorum, and obviously the director of the FBI didn't follow the decorum. So I don't know what more I can do than plead with my people who are fellow senators to follow a certain decorum, and I assume it would be followed on the other side. I don't appreciate the insults that went to Democrat members, particularly where they were wrong. But after seeing how senators handled the FBI director, I guess I felt that just let the show go on the way the senators want it to go on. And that's what developed as a result of it. That may be a weak excuse for what happened that day, but I thought things didn't work out the way I expected them to when the FBI director was here, and some of the people on your side of the aisle were some of the ones that were screaming and yelling and talking over the FBI director. Meeting adjourned.
It ended not with a gavel slammed in triumph, but with a plea for order. The room had just absorbed a singular exchange. Senator Adam Schiff, voice steady but edged with disbelief, cataloging what he says happened the day before. Legitimate oversight questions met not with answers, but with pre-written personal attacks. And then Chairman Chuck Grassley, shoulders squared under the weight of custom, answering that he had asked for respect at the outset, that he had even promised the witness time to respond after senators finished, and yet the hearing slid anyway into crosstalk and grievance. Two voices, two memories of the same room. One hard question. What is the use of oversight if the questions themselves are treated as provocations? Schiff set the stakes plainly. He said a ranking member asked a basic, unavoidable question. What legal authority justified troops rappelling from a Black Hawk helicopter to conduct a military-style assault on an apartment building, zip-tying children in a major American city? He said another senator sought clarity about an FBI undercover operation, about $50,000 paid before an official became the White House's border czar, with an expectation of help later, and the simple follow-up. What happened to the money? He said a colleague asked about a reported Justice Department opinion authorizing the destruction of ships in the Caribbean. In his telling, each inquiry, whether about helicopters over a city, secret cash in an operation, or explosive power asserted abroad, received the same response. Not substance, but scorn. Not the why and how, but a strike at the questioner's character. If that's not an appropriate oversight question, I don't know what is, he said. The point wasn't partisan theater. It was jurisdiction. Congress must ask. The executive must account. If a witness refuses the premise of the question, then oversight is not wounded, it's abandoned. Then came Grassley's answer, delivered like a man who knows that procedure is not decoration, but the bones of a republic. He said he set the decorum, that he told both sides to treat one another with respect. He said he'd offered space, time at the end for the witness to respond to anything left hanging. And yet, he conceded, the hearing unraveled, the way a prior appearance by the FBI director had unraveled. Voices rising, senators talking over the witness, the temperature overtaking the transcript. He did not endorse the insults lobbed at Democrats. He said plainly he did not appreciate them, but he explained almost with a sigh that he let the show go on as the senators wanted it to go on. A chairman confessing that decorum can be announced, but not always enforced. Here is the truth the moment reveals about government, justice, and the moral architecture of power. In a constitutional system, facts are not discovered by force of personality. They are yielded by fidelity to rules. Oversight is the moral duty that wraps itself in legal form. It demands both the courage to ask and the discipline to answer. When questions about helicopters over apartment rooftops or cash that changes hands before titles change are met with personal broadsides, the public learns a terrible lesson, that humiliation is the price of inquiry and evasion is the privilege of office. That is not oversight. That is theater with the lights turned low. But there is another lesson in Grassley's reply, and it is equally sobering. Decorum cannot be begged into existence. It must be protected. It must be insisted upon when the microphones go hot and the cameras roll. A chairman's job is not to keep the peace at any cost. It is to keep the rules at every cost. Because in these rooms, rules are the only thing the citizen has, the only defense against power that can shout back, the only guarantee that the question, however inconvenient, however pointed, will outlast the mood of the moment. Names matter in this story because character matters. Schiff, who says he's grown used to attacks, asked for something simple: that witnesses be instructed to answer or state, on the record, why they refuse, that the chair join in written requests for answers because the chair's signature carries weight even across a hostile aisle, that the Senate not import a new template for hearings in which content is replaced by combat and the committee's gravest tool, its subpoena of the truth, is blunted by insult. Grassley, who has shepherded more hearings than most members will ever see, answered with a reminder of what he asked of them all: respect going in, a chance to respond at the end. He admitted the failure and, in doing so, framed the choice for the next hearing. Do we police ourselves, or do we let the show run wild? The broader political context is not subtle. We live in an age that rewards the viral clip over the verified claim, that monetizes outrage and treats restraint as weakness. But the American system is built to frustrate that instinct. It is slow on purpose. It prizes the question asked in good faith and the answer grounded in law. It takes the shortest route to the long view. What we normalize today becomes the rule tomorrow. If yesterday's witness can swat away questions about military force used in an American city, about money paid undercover, about legal opinions that might blow hulls to pieces, then tomorrow's witness will swat away more. And the day after, the questions won't be asked at all. So let this be the line drawn in the record. Oversight is not a favor. It is not a partisan courtesy extended only to friends. It is the muscle of the Republic, a muscle that atrophies with disuse and tears under stress if it's not trained to endure. The chairman must enforce the rules without fear of his own side. The minority must press its questions without surrendering to spectacle. Witnesses must submit to the dignity and discomfort of accountability. That is how justice earns its name. That is how government earns our trust. That is how a hearing becomes a reckoning, not a performance. And you, the citizen who has every right to be weary of the noise, have a role, too. Demand the substance. Reward the answer that cites a statute, a memorandum, a chain of command. Reject the applause line that leaves the question hanging in the air like smoke. Tell your representatives that you did not send them to star in a show. You sent them to steward a system, because the moral is not complicated, even if the politics are. Power that won't answer is power that can't be trusted. Congress must ask, witnesses must answer, and the chair must make sure that both happen every time. If you believe that, if you want more than highlights and heat, if you want hearings that harvest facts, stand with us. Subscribe to the Congress Brief. Support our work to demand answers, defend decorum, and keep the promise that in this country truth is not shouted down, it is put on the record